Good morning, my name is Jeremy Sanger of Ventech, and today we're going to show you a short video of how to install kit number 78 of the Ventech Rapid Supplemental Heater on this Thomas built Saf-T-Liner equipped with a Detroit Diesel DD5 engine. So let's get started and unpack the box. First, remove the quick start guide and set it aside. Under the protective packaging, you'll find the electrical harness, a serpentine belt, the main LHG assembly, which is already attached to the mounting bracketry. Be careful because this assembly is quite heavy and it includes sensors and wiring that needs to be protected during the installation. Also in the box is the electronic ECU, there's an idler pulley and a small bag of miscellaneous fasteners and hardware. Open the Ziploc bag and check its contents against the parts list inside the manual. The bag includes a red safety tag, a small tube of Loctite, a plastic flow restrictor, a rubber grommet, 4 long bolts, 1 short bolt, 5 split washers and 4 self-threading screws. Before you go any further, spend a few minutes to study the Quick Start Guide. On the front page you'll see a QR code that will enable you to download the installation manual as well as view this video. Before you begin the installation you must download and print the manual. Do not attempt the installation by only watching the video. On the reverse side of the Quick Start Guide is a list of all the additional components that you will need to provide to complete the installation. Make sure you have all these parts on hand before you begin. Finally, we've also included a list of recommended tools needed to complete the install. We brought our bus into a workshop here to do the installation. We've removed the hood to facilitate filming only. It's not necessarily required to remove the hood to perform the installation. We've only done this for ease of filming. Once you've positioned the bus, turn the front wheels to a full left lock position before you turn off the ignition. This will give you accessibility behind the front left wheel into the engine bay to perform the install. Open the battery tray on the left hand side of the bus, positioned below the driver's seating position. Disconnect the negative cable to the batteries. If the bus is equipped with summer valves, close all of them. These valves are normally alongside the chassis on the passenger side of the engine bay. If the vehicle is hot, slowly release the pressure in the cooling system by removing the cap from the degasser tank. Drain the cooling system by opening the petcock at the bottom of the radiator. Using a 5-gallon pail, you really need to only drain about 4 gallons out in order to install the LHG. Next, disconnect the power steering input shaft from the steering gearbox by removing the bolt and nut with a 17mm socket, a 3-inch extension and a 1/2-inch impact driver. Use a 17mm open box wrench to hold the nut in position on the back side. Using a pry bar, remove the steering shaft from the steering box. Be careful not to damage the steering box seal. Attach the red reminder tag provided in the kit to the power steering input shaft. Remove the primary serpentine belt. This is the belt that drives the fan. Remove it from the pulleys by placing a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar with a 15mm short weld socket on the tensioner and rotate to release the belt tension. Drape the belt out of the way but do not remove it completely. Now remove the secondary serpentine belt from the engine. This is the accessory belt Remove it by placing a 1/2-inch drive breaker with a 15mm short weld socket on the tensioner. Rotate the tensioner to release the tension on the belt and remove this belt completely. Remove the engine intake manifold support bracket from the engine using a 3/8 impact driver with a 6-inch and 9-inch extension joined together and a 13mm short weld socket. The last remaining bolt going into the bottom of the intake can be removed with a 3/8 impact driver and a 13mm short weld socket. Install the idler pulley provided in the kit to the front of the engine using a 3/8 long ratchet and an 18mm short weld socket. Remember to put a few drops of the Loctite 243 on the threads before installing. Once you've installed the engine pulley, torque it to 85 Nm. For ease of installation, the LHG has already been mounted to the 2 mounting brackets needed for the kit installation. This sub-assembly is about to be installed on the engine using 4 bolts at this end of the bracket to bolt to the block of the engine, and then there will be a 5th bolt here which mounts to the underside of the intake manifold. Please note that the sub-assembly has got multiple cables coming from it. The sub-assembly is equipped with 2 RPM sensors, which are these 2 plugs, and the clutch connection. Later on, you'll note that these 2 cables are color-coded, red and yellow, and they will be plugged into corresponding red and yellow plugs on the installation harness. To ease the installation of the LHG assembly, we recommend that you remove the power steering return hose from the reservoir and put it out of the way until you finish this stage of the installation. Take the 4 M8x30 and 1 M8x20 bolt out of the Ziploc bag, add a split washer to each bolt, and then add Loctite before using to install the LHG sub-assembly.
Now we're going to use a 1/4-inch ratchet with a 13mm socket to get these front bolts due to space confinement. Okay, the front top bolt is snug. Now the bottom front bolt. Okay, we have the front top and bottom bolts snug. We're going to use a little more leverage to fully tighten it with a 13mm open end box and wrench. There we go.
Note that the LHG subassembly incorporates a rear backstay bracket that replaces the engine intake manifold support bracket that was previously removed. Using a 13mm short weld socket, install the M8x20mm bolt into the new bracket, securing it to the intake manifold. Finally, reinstall the power steering return hose back into the power steering reservoir. You're now ready to install the two serpentine belts. The secondary accessory belt that drives the LHG can be installed first. Note that this belt is replaced with the belt provided in the kit. Consult the installation manual for a belt wrap diagram found on page 6. You can now reinstall the primary belt.
Ready?
Before we start to install the new hoses on the LHG, remove the two plastic shipping caps from the top and bottom port. Note that the bottom port is the cold coolant inlet to the LHG, while the top port is the hot coolant out. Remove the coolant hose from the top of the engine that feeds the rear heater core circuit. Remove the other end of the hose where it connects to the bus inlet heater core fitting, and then remove the hose from the system. Be ready with a bucket to catch any coolant remaining in the hose. Cut a 3-inch length of corrugated tubing and slide it over the power steering hose line. This will protect the power steering line from the LHG unicoil hose springs that will be installed next. You should have previously prepared two lengths of 3/4 inch hosing, one 75 inches long and one 92 inches long. On each one of these hoses at one end, place a flexible unicoil hose spring and form it into a 90-degree bend. Begin to lay these hoses beginning in the vicinity of the LHG, down the left-hand side of the engine towards the bulkhead, across the top of the engine, and then forward down the right-hand side of the engine towards the previously removed hosing and hose fittings. Connect the 90-degree end of the 75-inch hose to the bottom fitting of the LHG heater. Connect the 90-degree end of the 92-inch hose to the top fitting of the LHG heater. Cut two 3-inch lengths from the corrugated tubing and slide it over the LHG hoses. Zip tie the hoses to the transmission dipstick tube using the two 3-inch pieces of tubing and one zip tie to protect them from rubbing. Once again, cut two 3-inch lengths from the corrugated tubing. Zip tie the hoses to the driver's side engine lift bracket by incorporating corrugated tubing as shown in the video. Cut two more lengths from the corrugated tubing. Zip tie the hoses to the passenger side engine lift bracket, again by incorporating the tubing as shown in the video. Zip tie the hoses to the degasser tank coolant hose bracket using two pieces of 3-inch tubing and one zip tie. As you feed the longer 92-inch hose down beside the EGR sensor, cut a 19-inch piece of corrugated tubing and slide over the hose to protect it from the sensor. Do not cable tie the hose to the EGR sensor. Route the 92-inch hose behind the intercooler tube down to the heater core inlet fitting located on the chassis rail. Make sure the 19-inch corrugated tubing is protecting the hose from all wear points while routing. Connect the shorter 75-inch hose to the previously disconnected rear heater core circuit supply port on top of the engine. The rear heater core circuit requires the installation of a nylon flow restrictor provided in the kit. Locate the 1-inch rubber heater hose return line where it connects to the steel hose. Using heater clamp pliers, clamp off the rubber hose about 6 inches from the steel line. Remove the hose and insert the nylon flow restrictor. Reinstall the heater hose onto the steel line and tighten the hose clamp. Remove the heater hose pliers. Drill a clearance hole in the firewall to receive the rubber grommet using a 1 1/8 inch hole saw at the location shown in the video. Install the grommet in the firewall. Using the self-drilling screws provided in the kit, mount the LHG ECU on the fender as shown in the video. Install the LHG harness. Plug the LHG 23-pin amp seal harness connector into the LHG ECU. Route the harness back towards the firewall and along the corrugated tubing, zip tying as necessary. Place the harness fuse holder over the hole that goes through the ECU and fender and then reinstall the screw. When the harness is in the vicinity of the firewall grommet, separate one of the pigtails that has the red and black power wires. This pigtail will be fed through the grommet at a later stage in the installation. Continue routing the 3 remaining pigtails down the power steering hydraulic return line towards the LHG. Connect one of the pigtails to the LHG temperature sensor and LHG clutch connector. Connect the 4-pin RPM plug, color-coded yellow, to the corresponding 4-pin RPM sensor, also yellow, on the LHG. Connect the 4-pin RPM plug, color-coded red, to the corresponding 4-pin RPM sensor, also red, on the LHG. Use caution as both these sensors use the same style plug. Double check the red and yellow tags match on each of the pigtails. Leave enough slack in the harness to avoid stress on any of the LHG sensors. Identify the ambient air temperature sensor pigtail. This pigtail has no connector on the end, but is equipped with a thermistor covered with heat shrink at the end of the pigtail. Route this pigtail down under the power steering reservoir, through the gearbox, along the frame to the front bumper, and zip tie it to the top of the engine block heater plug. If you are installing the LHG on a bus that does not have an engine block heater, then secure the air inlet temperature sensor to some other location behind the front fender. Route the LHG power and ground pigtail through the grommet and the firewall into the bus cabin. Push all of this pigtail through the grommet into the driver's footwell area. Remove the 6 number 2 square head screws from the switch panel compartment and remove the panel. Next, remove the compartment to the left of the switch panel by prying it out using a screwdriver. Route the power pigtail into the cavity. Connect the pink wire to the 3 amp male spade terminal in the distribution panel. Please note that the grey wire is not connected. Connect the red power wire and the black ground wire ring terminals to the power and ground lugs. Reinstall the power and ground lug nuts and torque to factory specifications. Reinstall the compartment cover and the switch panel. Use the 6 number 2 square head bolts on the switch panel and then tighten. Before you start up the system for the first time, it is very important that you read pages 26 through 29 of the operating manual. This section clearly explains how the control system works and how the decision is made to engage and disengage the LHG. Once you have the ignition on and have turned on all the heater controls, inspect the ECU before starting the engine. Make sure that the no RPM signal light is on and that the ambient temp is OK and coolant temp is OK. If the ambient temperature LED is not turned on, it tells us that the bus is sitting in an ambient temperature higher than 10 degrees Celsius. It will therefore be necessary to submerge the ambient air temperature sensor in a cup of cold water or snow to fool the system into energizing the LHG. As explained on page 26 of the installation manual, when you start the engine for the first time, the LHG will go into an automatic burnishing routine. This only happens for a new installation. The burnishing is indicated by the flashing yellow light on the LHG ECU. Let this burnishing routine complete, typically taking about 3 minutes, before you put the school bus into service. To optimize the performance of the Ventech LHG while idling, elevate the engine RPM by using the fast idle feature equipped on the bus. Finally, before you put the bus into service, it is critical that you follow the coolant system de-aeration procedure that's available in the chassis maintenance manual for your vehicle.